Once upon a time, I was a Nikon shooter. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thomas Love here from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, and today I'd like to give you my 2 cents about the new to be released Nikon Z8, which we are all waiting for months now, for years, for weeks, for how long I don't even remember. And finally, Nikon shared a teaser. They're saying in less than 10 days they will have a big announcement that we are all placing our bet about it being the Nikon Z8. Nikon Z8, we had leaked specs, and apparently in 2023 it will be barely comparable in terms of specs to the Canon R5, which is 3 years old. So it has the technology implemented, which is at least 2 years outdated. But why are all the Nikon shooters so excited about it? Let's see it together. Once upon a time, I was a Nikon shooter and I loved my D750. It was a full-frame DSLR. It was almost the best in class. The sublime machine at the time was the Nikon D850 that was released years after I purchased it, and it still is the best DSLR ever made from Nikon for the prosumer segment, as they call it. So Nikon itself, they tried to put the best efforts when they switched to production of mirrorless cameras to state that the Nikon Z7 was comparable in terms of specs and reliability to the Nikon D850. I was never really convinced by the new mirrorless, because in the switch from DSLR to mirrorless, then we will stress and put the accent rather than on the quality of the glasses as we knew it. So that was the sector as we knew it, stressing the quality of the glasses, while now technology was accounted for the most part. And so the real difference comes from technology rather than the glasses. So if by the time I had my D750, the real difference was whether having or not Nikon glasses versus Tamron or third-party glasses, now the real difference is the body itself, because most of the photographers put the accent on the AF, tracking, to the burst rate, so on and so forth. And so the real difference that we discussed in the eternal fight, whether it was Canon or Nikon, the best brand for cameras, back then we were only comparing the color science and the quality of the glasses, while right now with the R mount for Canon and the Z mount for Nikon, also the rest of the techs come into consideration and account for the most of it. So Canon, they were faster and faster following up and catching up with Sony, that introduced a superb AF tracking for people, for animals, for cars, for airplanes, for whatever you need to track, while Nikon stayed a bit behind because the Z6 and the Z7 were not enough, and also the second release Z6 Mark II and the Z7 Mark II were still not good enough to be compared to other brands in terms of technology, while the Z mount glasses are superb. They have a bigger entrance, so much more light, and they are able to resolve higher megapixels resolutions, so that when finally the Z9 hit the market, most of the pros that didn't switch yet to Sony went for it, and so they started using it with great satisfaction. I never did that step. I stayed back and kept watching at the Nikon moves, because the brand, it is a brand that I love and I esteem a lot. And finally, with the Z8, we're having the Z9 equivalent for the prosumer, so not big and bulky, no integrated grip because it's way too big to be used as an everyday carry, but apparently almost most of the specs that are in the Z9 will be present in the Z8. 45 megapixel sensor, and I don't know why that's the discussion going, whether it's for photography or for video. To me, if you have 45 megapixel in your sensor, well, it is for photography, because for video you don't need that much, and even lower megapixel would give you better result. You don't need that much for a 4K video. You don't need that much for introducing logs. And so this is gonna be a small Z9 as they call it, or maybe not, or maybe all the specs that have been leaked so far were just to put some smoke or some sand in the eyes, and finally Nikon will come out with a real breakthrough. But apart from that, having an electronic shutter only, well, with a stock sensor might not be a problem of rolling shutter, because the Z9 doesn't have it that much. The Z8 might have it, might not, but it's still a stock sensor, so I don't think that will make the difference. I would love to have a physical mechanical shutter, but apparently the electronic one is the future. And so apart from that, we have a lot of Nikon users out there that are impatient to see this announcement because they were not convinced by the Nikon Z6 Mark I and II, 7 Mark I and II, and are finally willing to pull the trigger for the Z8. So in my humble opinion, I really hope that we can switch back to see the quality of the machine itself and of the glasses rather than the technology that is applied into it, because back in the days when I was using my Nikon D750, I was in love with the 3D tracking, which was still based on contrast, but it was able to track your subject while you were reframing. So it was something that we used to do to focus on the main subject, to have the metering, the exposure, and the focusing point, and then reframe at ease. While right now with that many megapixels, you don't need to do it anymore because eventually you can crop your image in post. But I was still loving the 3D tracking that was tracking the main subject while I was reframing, and they came out with very good results out of it. So with that, I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, please remember to like it, share it on your social media, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the new videos to come, and I guess I will see you later. Thank you. Bye bye.